Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be the Combat Series episode 43 for you guys today. Of course, this episode is going to be coming out on all four of our platforms, our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So let's go ahead and dive into the first segment of the Combat Series this week. I'll be sharing my Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora fight summary. So before I go into the fight summary, I just want to give you guys a lot of guys out there and girls out there watching and listening that show me a lot of support for the fight prediction I had for this fight between Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora. The support was absolutely incredible. For YouTube viewers, we did over 1.4 thousand views on the Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu fight prediction. I love the support, especially the people out there in Australia that showed support from a guy coming all the way from the East Coast of the United States. So I really appreciate the love and support from you guys on the YouTube. But this is my fight summary for this fight. So last night in the sport of boxing, we saw that Sebastian Fundora pulled off the win by split decision, defeating Tszyu by split decision to become the new WBO and WBC super welterweight champion in the world of boxing, becoming the new king of the super welterweight division and becoming the new unified champion at the 154-pound division. So my thoughts on this fight, man, this was a good fight. This really was a good fight. It was an absolute war. It was a throwback fight. It was a bloodbath. All blood, sweat, and tears went into this fight to become a unified world champion at the super welterweight division. I was truly a fan of this fight. You had Tszyu's nasty cut gushing blood from the top of his forehead. You had Sebastian Fundora bleeding from his nose. But Sebastian Fundora looked really good and impressive in the victory. He pulled it off using his height and his reach advantage, using the jab, popping the jab for all 12 championship rounds of this fight, and really went from being knocked out in his previous fight last year against Brian Mendoza to becoming a new unified champion in the sport of boxing. But the accidental elbow, to me, that happened in the second round between Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora really changed the complexion of this fight, because Tszyu was moving comfortably. He was moving and rolling comfortably within the first two rounds of this fight up until that accidental cut that really delayed the whole entire fight. And Tszyu wasn't really the same, because how can you be the same if you're bleeding, gushing, bleeding from the top of your head and your vision is blurred out there? You can't really see. So for 10 straight rounds, Tszyu unfortunately did not have the same vision, with blood coming down his eyes, and it's hard for him to hit his designated target when you can barely see, fighting a guy that is nearly a foot taller than you, and Sebastian Fundora, who's nearly 7 foot tall. So I felt so bad for Tszyu, but Sebastian Fundora pulled it off. He just executed the game plan more. He took advantage of the bleeding, and it wasn't like Sebastian Fundora wasn't bleeding also. He possibly could have had a broken nose out there. It was hard for him to bleed. You guys know, being an athlete or whatever you're doing, if you're moving with a bloody nose, it's hard to breathe, because you can only breathe out of the nose and the mouth area. That cuts off the circulation, so you can only breathe through your mouth. And Sebastian Fundora went through a lot last night. That was one heck of a fight. I was a fan of it. Both that had the cojones to fight on the inside, give us an entertaining fight. And the first main event of the PBC era under the Amazon Prime banner. So congratulations to Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu for giving us one hell of a fight last night in the sport of boxing, and definitely reheating up this super welterweight division that really didn't have a trajectory, as I get tongue-tied, of how this division was going to play out for the calendar year 2024. Now this division looks red hot, and we have to thank the guys of Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu for doing this. But man, what a heck of a fight. So that leads me to what happens next at the super welterweight division now, because now all of a sudden this division has picked up a lot of steam and is a red hot division, one of the hottest divisions in my opinion in the sport of boxing will see in 2024, because now you have Sebastian Fundora, the new established king of this division. He's the unified champion, holding the WBC and WBO world titles. You have Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford both moving up to this division, have their sights set on the 154-pound division. You still have Tszyu, a bad man in his own right, in this division. You have the former unified champion Jermell Charlo, if he could get his act right back together and get back into the sport of boxing. You also have Virgil Ortiz, who just moved up to this division. You have Erickson Lubin. So this division is definitely going to be red hot for the calendar year 2024. Now we are seeing that Errol Spence could be in line to fight Sebastian Fundora next. And it could be an interesting fight because I think that fight could do great numbers, do great pay-per-view buys, do great pay-per-view numbers, and sell out Jerry's World in Dallas, Texas, fighting in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium for a unified championship fight between Sebastian Fundora and Errol Spence. Or you could have the possibility of Terrence Crawford being next in line because he is the mandatory for the WBO world title, the super welterweight division. So you could potentially see Sebastian Fundora versus Terrence Crawford next. So we are in line for this division to heat up. But if you want my honest opinion, I think it should go to Crawford. If I had it my way, it should go to Crawford. He is the mandatory. He is a former undisputed champion at the welterweight division. It would make sense for him to be next in line to fight Sebastian Fundora next, with potentially having Errol Spence versus Tszyu fight each other. And a winner gets a fight at the winner of Sebastian Fundora and Crawford. That's how I would play it out. That's two big time fights with 4 caliber fighters waiting to happen at the 154-pound division. And honestly, now that I think about it, I really do think that it would make sense for Sebastian Fundora to fight out of all his potential fights that he could have next between Crawford, Spence, and Tszyu again. I really think we should run this fight back between Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu. Because the fight, if you guys sat and watched the fight, Tszyu was rolling in the first round, like I just said. He was rolling and had Sebastian Fundora on defensive mode. Tszyu was firing on all cylinders on the inside, and he hurt him in the first couple rounds of that fight with some stiff combinations. But that whole thing of him bleeding accidentally with that elbow really slowed down the fight, and Tszyu was not the same. He was bleeding, and when you're fighting somebody that's a foot taller than you and your vision's already blurred, it's hard for you to have the same game plan throughout the fight with blood gushing down your face. You have to look up to fight your opponent. You can't really see where you're going, and Tszyu took advantage of that, using his height and reach advantage to win this fight, popping the jab and using his distance in the fight. It was still an entertaining fight, but it would be fair to run Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora back very, very soon. Maybe next again. I would not mind seeing that fight again, and we could potentially see a different outcome, or Sebastian Fundora could beat Tszyu again. But hey, that's my opinion on it. But we are in store for this super welterweight division to really take it up a notch in the calendar year 2024. But final thoughts on the PBC card. These are my thoughts on the PBC card. I really thought they hit it out of the park. And I thought Amazon really PBC did a good job with their debut with Amazon Prime. This was a great pay-per-view card from start to finish. They didn't overdo it. And what I mean by that is they didn't wait along for the fights. The flow of the pay-per-view card went nicely. After a fight was done, the next fight started 5, not even 10 minutes later. It was a good flow throughout the night. All four of the fights were very entertaining in their own right. Julio Cesar Martinez and Angelino Cordova did a really good job. I think they stole the show with that fight. WBC world title fight, the 115-pound division. Pitbull Cruz, Isaac Cruz, destroying Rolly Romero for 8 rounds was truly entertaining to see. And the main event of Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu was really good. A bloodbath, a throwback fight of blood, sweat, and tears, doing it all to become a world champion in boxing. Who does not like to see that? So I thought they did really good. Give me pay-per-view cards like this. A stacked card that lives up to the hype and the expectations. And I think Amazon Prime did that. So I'm looking forward to seeing their next pay-per-view card when they have Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Mugina on Cinco de Mayo weekend. Let's throw in some top-tier guys on that undercard. Let's throw in Jerron Boots Ennis on the undercard for the co-main event. Let's throw in some guys, some 140-pounders to get some shine at this on this card. I really think Amazon Prime PBC did a really good job with Amazon Prime last night, so I'm really happy with that. But those are my thoughts on the Sebastian Fundora versus Tszyu fight summary, and those are my thoughts on the PBC making their debut with Amazon Prime.